Hello, my name is Eleanor, and I'm 67 years old, and I'm going to tell you the story of how my picture-perfect 40-year marriage came to a devastating end, and how I built a new life from the ashes. Before we begin, I'd be so grateful if you'd leave a like on this video and subscribe to the channel. And please, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I love knowing that my story is reaching people in different places. For 40 years, my life was built on a foundation of what I believed to be solid rock. My husband, David, and I had created a life together in a leafy, quiet suburb in Ohio, the kind of place where you know the mailman by name and borrow cups of sugar from your neighbors. We raised two wonderful children, Mark and Sarah, who were now grown and had families of their own, making me a very proud grandmother. David was a successful financial advisor, a pillar of the community. He was the man everyone turned to for advice, for a steady hand. I was the dedicated wife, the architect of our domestic world, the one who managed our home with quiet efficiency, hosted the most memorable Christmas dinners, and volunteered 3 days a week at the local library. Our life was a well-tended garden, every bloom in its place. And then there was my sister, Claire. She was 5 years younger than me, my shadow and my confidant since we were little girls sharing secrets under the covers. When her own marriage fell apart a few years back, I was her rock. I had her over for dinner almost every night, helped her find a small house just 10 minutes away, and listened for hours as she cried on my shoulder. Her presence in our life was constant, and I thought a blessing. She was family. I trusted her with my children, my home, my deepest fears. I trusted them both, implicitly. Looking back, the signs were there, like tiny, almost invisible cracks in a porcelain vase, a lingering glance between them that I dismissed as simple affection, a private joke I wasn't privy to, the time he bought me a silk scarf for my birthday in a shade of emerald green I never wore. "It just caught my eye. I thought you'd look stunning," he'd said. I smiled and thanked him, all while Claire, sitting at our table, was wearing a blouse of that exact same shade. I told myself I was being paranoid, a silly, jealous woman. The real fissure, the one that could no longer be ignored, appeared on a dreary Tuesday in October. I had spent the entire afternoon making David's favorite meal, a pot roast that filled the house with the smell of comfort and home. He was supposed to be home by 6. At 6:15, the phone rang. "Honey, so sorry. I'm absolutely swamped with a client meeting. It's going to run late. Don't wait up for me," he said, his voice a convincing blend of stress and apology. I was disappointed, of course, but this was the life of a man in demand. I ate a solitary dinner at our large dining table, the empty chair opposite me feeling like a silent rebuke. I carefully put a plate aside for him, covering it to keep it warm. Around 9 p.m., our daughter Sarah called, her voice tight with worry. Her youngest son, little Ben, had a fever and she needed my advice on what to do. We talked for 20 minutes, and as she was calming down, she said, her voice brightening, "Oh, well, at least Dad is finally taking a night off. He deserves it." I just saw him and Aunt Claire heading into La Stella, that new Italian place downtown. I waved, but I don't think they saw me. The world went silent. La Stella, the restaurant I had clipped a review of from the local paper and left on the fridge for weeks, begging him to take me. He was always too busy, too tired, or the market is too volatile to be spending on things like that right now, Eleanor. A client meeting. He had lied. So effortlessly. My daughter's cheerful voice on the other end of the line suddenly sounded like it was coming from a million miles away. I murmured something reassuring about Ben's fever and hung up the phone. I stood in the kitchen, my hand still on the receiver, staring at the plate of pot roast that I had so lovingly prepared. It looked obscene. I picked it up, walked to the trash can, and scraped the entire meal into the bin. It was the first act of rebellion I didn't even know I was starting. He came home after midnight. He tiptoed into the bedroom thinking I was asleep. He smelled of red wine and a flowery, expensive perfume that I had never worn in my life. I lay in bed, my back to him, feigning sleep, my heart a cold, heavy stone in my chest. The next morning, I rose before him, as always. I made the coffee. I watched him drink it, watched him read the paper, a perfect portrait of a husband without a care in the world. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw the hot coffee in his smug, handsome face, but I did nothing. I just smiled and asked if he had a productive meeting. "Oh, incredibly," he said, not even looking up from the stock market page. Mailed the account. It was worth the late night. It was the casual ease of the lie that galvanized me. That morning after he left for work, whistling, I did something I had never done in our 40 years of marriage. I sat down at his desk, opened our shared iPad, the one we use for family photos and recipes, and my hands shaking, I opened his messages. And there it was. Not a flirtation, not a mistake, an entire parallel life, a universe of betrayal documented in blue and gray bubbles. Months and months of messages between him and my sister, declarations of love, photos from a weekend trip to the coast they took while I thought he was at a financial conference, plans for their future, and cruel, dismissive jokes about me. One thread from 2 weeks prior made the breath catch in my throat. David had written, "Are you sure she doesn't suspect anything?" And Claire's reply, the reply from my own sister, the woman who had cried in my arms, was this: "Please, she has no idea. She's too busy baking cookies and arranging flowers to see what's right in front of her. She lives in her own little world." Her own little world. That's what they thought of me, a simple domestic creature, content with her baking in her garden. And in that moment, sitting in my perfect kitchen, surrounded by the beautiful things we had collected for a lifetime, I understood that my world hadn't just cracked. It had been a lie from the very beginning. The foundation wasn't rock, it was sand, and the tide had just come in. The initial wave of grief was so powerful, I thought it would drown me. I spent the day in a daze, wandering from room to room, looking at the furniture, looking at the photographs on the walls. Every happy memory was now tainted. A scene from a movie where I was the only actor who didn't know the script. But as the sun began to set, the grief started to recede, and something else took its place. A cold, hard, clarifying anger. They had underestimated me. They had mistaken my kindness for stupidity, and that was a mistake they would live to regret. The woman who baked cookies was gone. A new woman sat in her place, a woman who now understood that her perfect life was a beautifully decorated stage, and she was the only one who didn't know the play was a tragedy. That day, I didn't make dinner. I made an appointment with the best, most ruthless divorce lawyer in the state. The lawyer's office was downtown, in a tall glass building that seemed a world away from my suburban life. Ms. Albright was a woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. She listened to my entire story without a single interruption, her expression unreadable. I handed her my phone to show her the messages. She scrolled through them, her lips a thin, straight line. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair. "Eleanor," she said, her voice crisp and clear, "your husband has been playing a very dangerous game. People in his profession, men with his kind of ego, believe they are untouchable. They get sloppy. Our job is to use that arrogance against him." "He manages all our finances," I said, feeling a familiar wave of helplessness. "I don't even know where to begin." "Oh, you'll begin right at home," she replied, a faint, predatory smile on her face. "We are not going to get emotional. We are going to get organized. We need to become forensic accountants. David is a financial advisor. He knows how to hide money. We need to know more about his money than he does. Go home, Eleanor. Act normal. Be the loving, clueless wife he thinks you are. And while he's out with your sister,
You will become my secret agent." For the next 3 months, I lived a double life that required an Oscar-worthy performance. I hosted dinner parties. I baked cookies. I listened to Claire complain about her lonely life, her eyes full of fake sympathy for how hard David was working these days. I would pat her hand and offer her another slice of cake, all while my mind was racing, planning my evening's espionage. The effort it took to smile at her, to not let the burning hatred show in my eyes, was physically draining. I would often retreat to the bathroom and grip the sink until my knuckles were white, just to keep from screaming. My true life began after David left the house. His home office, once a place I rarely entered, became my command center. He had taught me the basics of Quicken and our household accounts years ago, thinking it was just another domestic duty he could offload. He never imagined I would use that knowledge to dismantle his empire. Night after night, armed with a small camera and a notebook, I delved into his world. I photographed every financial statement, every credit card bill, every tax return for the past 10 years. I discovered a labyrinth of deception. There were investment portfolios I never knew existed, wire transfers to offshore accounts. There was even a deed to a condo down in Florida, registered under a holding company with a name I didn't recognize. He wasn't just cheating on me emotionally, he was systematically siphoning off our shared wealth, building a separate kingdom for himself. One night, my heart nearly stopped. I was in his office, the contents of his private filing cabinet spread across the floor, when I heard the garage door open. He was home hours earlier than expected. With lightning speed, I shoved the files back into the cabinet, locked it, and sprinted back to the living room, picking up a book just as he walked in. "You're home early," I said, my voice an octave too high. He just grunted, complaining about a canceled meeting. He never knew he had come within seconds of discovering his downfall. The final, crucial piece of my plan was the house itself. Our beautiful 4-bedroom colonial, the one I had poured my heart into, was legally in my name. It had been a gift from my parents when we first got married, a way to ensure I always had security. It was a detail David, in his arrogance, had long since forgotten. The day I chose for the confrontation was our 40th wedding anniversary.
I set the stage for the final act of our marriage. I cooked a magnificent dinner, roast chicken, potatoes dauphinoise, asparagus with hollandaise. I used the finest china, the crystal glasses, the sterling silver. I lit candles. From the outside, it looked like a romantic celebration. To me, it felt like preparing a last meal for the condemned. David and Claire arrived together, arm in arm, laughing about something. They were bringing me a gift, they said, thinking they were playing their parts perfectly in this little domestic play. David handed me a large bouquet of expensive roses, kissing my cheek with cold lips. I smiled, a genuine smile, for the first time in months. It was the smile of a predator that knows the trap is about to spring. "Thank you, David. How thoughtful," I said. "Before we eat, I have a little anniversary presentation for you both, a walk down memory lane." I led them into the living room. I turned on the large television mounted above the fireplace. But instead of the expected slideshow of family vacations and smiling children, the screen flickered to life with a crisp, clear image of a bank statement from a Cayman Islands account. His name was right at the top. I clicked the remote. The next image was a screenshot of a text message. Claire's words. "She's too busy baking cookies." Click. The deed to the Florida condo. Click. A photo of them kissing on a hotel balcony taken by a private investigator Miss Albright had hired. I let the images cycle through in silence. The color drained from their faces. David's charming smile collapsed into a mask of horror. Claire began to stammer, her hand flying to her throat. "Eleanor, you don't understand. I can explain." I held up my hand, silencing her. "No, Claire, you can't," I said,
my voice steady and cold. "But let me explain something to you." I walked over to the polished mahogany coffee table and placed 2 thick, pristine envelopes on it. I pushed the first one towards David. "This," I said, "is a copy of the divorce petition I filed this morning. It includes a full and complete accounting of every asset you have systematically tried to hide from me for the last decade. Miss Albright, my lawyer, is quite confident that the court will see things my way. Your financial world is about to be audited, David, thoroughly." His mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. Then I turned to my sister, the woman who had held my hand and lied to my face. I pushed the second envelope towards her. "And this, Claire, is a formal demand for repayment of the $50,000 in personal loans you took from me after your divorce, which I so foolishly never asked you to repay in writing. It also contains a notice for you to vacate the house you are currently living in, as the down payment was made from a joint account that is now frozen as part of the divorce proceedings. And finally, this is a restraining order. If you ever come near me, my home, or my children again, I will have you arrested. You have 30 days. David finally exploded. "You bitch! You can't do this! This house, our life!" "That's where you're wrong," I said, feeling a calmness I hadn't felt in years. "The house is in my name. It always has been. So I'm not asking you to leave our house. I'm telling you to get out of my house. Both of you, now!" They stood there, 2 statues in the ruins of the world they had built on lies, defeated. The power they held over me, the power they wielded with their secrets and my ignorance, had evaporated. Watching them stumble out of my home for the very last time, their faces a mixture of shock and fury, that was the first taste of my perfect revenge. That was 2 years ago. The divorce was messy, but with the evidence I had gathered, David had no choice but to settle. He lost his reputation, his standing in the community, and a significant portion of the wealth he had tried so hard to hide from me. Claire moved away in disgrace. I sold that big, empty house full of ghosts and polished lies. I bought a small, beautiful cottage by a lake, an hour outside the city. It has a large garden and a porch where I drink my coffee every morning. With my share of the settlement, I did something the old Eleanor would have never dared to do. I bought a small, struggling bookstore in the nearby town and poured my heart into it. I named it The Next Chapter. My children, Mark and Sarah, were shocked and hurt when I told them everything. There was a difficult period of adjustment, but one afternoon, Sarah came to the bookstore and we talked for hours. I told her everything, not just what her father and aunt had done, but how it had made me feel, invisible, foolish, powerless. She cried, and I held her, and in that moment, our relationship was rebuilt on a new foundation of honesty. Now, they are my biggest supporters. They visit me at the bookstore, bringing my grandchildren, who fill my new, smaller home with a pure, uncomplicated joy that no 40-year-old lie could ever match. I am no longer just a dona de casa. I am Eleanor, a business owner, a grandmother, a friend, a survivor. I learned that sometimes the only way to get your life back is to have the courage to burn the old one to the ground and build something new and beautiful in its place. Something that is truly, entirely your own. And that strength, that peace, that's a story I wanted to share. Thank you for listening to my story. If you've ever had to find your own strength in a difficult time, please share your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories from The Neighbor's Diary. Until next time.